My name is Chris Omalwa. I work for Nation Media Group. I'm based here in the US. And today I'm speaking to Dr. Roselyn Akombe. Roselyn Akombe is what we now refer to as the former member of the commission, the IEBC. Ros left her post on the commission because of issues that she had. And she's here now in the US, back to her second home. And we're here just to follow up on some of the issues that she has raised, even as we prepare to go into the elections. Ros, let's start from the end. You're back in the US right now. How does it feel being back in your first or second home?
I mean, Kenya will always be my first home. That's where I was born, that's where I was raised. I would have preferred to be there right now, to continue supporting the electoral process, to continue supporting a process of ensuring that we have peace and stability in the country. But obviously, the environment didn't allow me to do that, and that is why I'm back here. I mean, obviously, given that my family is here, I'm happy to be back here and to continue contributing in whatever way that I can to other responsibilities relating to other parts of the world.
Given that you're back now here, has your role as a concerned member of the commission, as a Kenyan, ended, or how is it going to go from here now onwards? What role do you think, or do you see yourself playing in the coming elections?
I still remain to be a Kenyan. I still remain to be a patriotic Kenyan that want to ensure that the right thing is done for my country. So I will speak out as a Kenyan and raise the concerns that I have raised as a Kenyan, no longer as a commissioner, no longer as a member of the IEBC, but as a Kenyan, a concerned Kenyan, because if anything happens to that country, I have a lot to lose as a Kenyan. And I had taken this job, with the commission, precisely because of the concerns that I'd had seen from the 2007-2008 situation in the country. I had watched what had happened, what was going on in 2015-16 in the lead up to the election. And so I had put in my name as a member of the commission because I wanted to avert the crisis that we had in 2007-2008. So that resolve has not ended. That resolve of me saying that I have a role to play as a Kenyan and as an American citizen in pushing these issues does not end, because as a Kenyan citizen, I'll continue raising those issues. As an American citizen, I believe that the US government and other governments also have a responsibility of ensuring that the stability of the country continues to be put at a very high radar, because again, as an American citizen, I understand the role of international partners in what goes on in the country, and that I hope that I will use the few days that I have here to really also raise these issues wherever I am here, among working together obviously with the Kenyan diaspora. We have a very active Kenyan diaspora here that has a stake in ensuring that the stability in the country. So I will not stop playing my patriotic role as a Kenyan. I have a responsibility to continue caring about what is going on there. It's not a role that ended by me leaving the commission. I still have a role to play as a Kenyan citizen.
Since you left Kenya, major things have happened. One, the chairman, Mr. Chebukati, has come out to, in a way, support your claim that, as you see it, the elections, if they have to take place, they won't be fair, free, and credible, as it was directed by the Supreme Court. The chief of the secretariat, Mr. Chiloba, has taken a leave of absence, 3 weeks leave of absence. And Jubilee has taken NASA to court to compel them to come to participate in the elections. Given those things, do you still think that the election should take place?
Look, Chris, if all these moves were being made 4 weeks ago, when we were calling for them, if the CEO and other senior staff had left a few weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, then you could say that it could make a difference. But leaving 6 days before the election really does not make any difference. because every structure that had, the confidence building needed to be done before. It's too late, in my view, to say that by the CEO going on leave now, it will make a huge difference. It will not. And and it's not just about that one person. The credibility of the election is all the other issues that I have raised. It's all about how do you ensure that the training that had been going on, that has been stopped. I have seen reports that some of the training of presiding officers are stopped because of incidents of violence that you had there. I raised issues on technology, on the fact that we were having changes in the technology, the transmission of results too late in the day. So those things have not been resolved. Those things have not been addressed. And the concerns, the security concerns that I had raised regarding our staff and voters in those regions still remain. They have not been addressed. So those are changes that are coming in too little, too late in the day. Regarding the other issues on the court processes, on taking the leader, Right Honorable Raila Odinga to court. I mean, I've said on several occasions that we're trying to use legal means and electoral means to address purely political problems. Those political problems we have to sit around the table and address those political problems. Legal challenges and going on to, with an election on the 26th of October, which the chairman himself has said he cannot guarantee that it's going to be a credible process, really for me defeats the purpose of our whole electoral process. Because you need, the Supreme Court didn't ask us to go back, or didn't ask that the commission goes back and organizes any election. It said that the commission had to go and organize an election that was going to be consistent with the Constitution and consistent with the existing laws. There are many questions that are being raised on whether what we are doing so far meets those the standards set out by the Supreme Court.
We are barely 3-4 days to the elections. All indication is that its systems go. The IEBC has said that they're ready for the elections. Do you think, given your inside knowledge as a commissioner, a former commissioner, do you think IEBC is actually ready for the elections in a week's time?
I enumerated things, that needed to be fixed for us to be able to say, or for the country to be able to say that it's ready for the election. You see, if it's about just having ballot papers in place and asking people to go out and vote, yes, you can say anybody can do that. You can have an election. But it's not just an election. It's about ensuring the credibility of that process, the legitimacy of that process. Those two have been questioned by none other than the chairman himself. So, yes, they can proceed and have an election. And I know that there are parts, we've heard very clearly that there are some politicians who are making noise and saying that an election has to happen at any cost. And I know that, the majority of the commissioners there want to have that election at any cost, which is consistent with what we have heard from a section of the political parties, so political actors. So yes, people will push to have that election, but is it one that is going to resolve the crisis that we have in the country right now? I don't believe so.
Again, based on your inside knowledge, why was it? Why weren't the kits that were used opened? Why was it so hard for the IEBC to open the servers as directed by the court?
One of the things that I keep talking about is the differences that we have. There's two centers of power that you have within the commission. So you have the commissioners under the leadership of the chairman making decisions, policy decisions. Then you have the CEO and the secretariat that then implements those decisions. And that is where the problem really is. So the commissioners had said, let's proceed, let's go, let's abide by the court order. But then you had a case in which the people who are supposed to implement it didn't let it happen. I mean, I recall very vividly myself and Professor Gulie going over to the 17th floor on the 28th or 29th of August and seeing the stalling that was going on there. Basically people were just logging in, but not providing access to the system. We don't know. I mean, we've been given explanations that the security firewalls were very tight and that's why it took such a long time. But seriously, I mean, it was more from the 28th to the 29th that whatever system that you had in place You could not be able to provide access. You could not be able to go through those firewalls and be able to give access. It's a difficult explanation to give. But also, what becomes even more tricky is that the commissioners had approved for an audit, an independent audit of the system to take place. That independent audit has not happened up to now. The commission had also asked, the commissioners had approved, that quality assurance audit is done of the system before it's used for the 26th of October election. That has not been done either. So in the absence of such independent audits being done, you can only go by the speculation that is there. So the speculation that was there on the 8th of August as it relates to the servers still remains, because we have not really done our own independent audit. Saffron has done its own, but that is a vendor. So when a vendor comes and gives you their report, yes, you'll accept it for its professionalism, but it's the vendor who's giving you, who's done their self-evaluation and given you and told you that this is what happened. But you need to have an independent, a third party that looks at it and says, okay, you are the service provider. I mean, you can't audit yourself. You can't be the person who's provided the service. You're auditing yourself and you're now giving us and saying this is the audit that we have done of the system. Somebody else has to come in and do that audit and then say, okay, a third party has done this audit and this is what we have found. So in the absence really of such an independent audit done, you cannot really build confidence around the issue of the technology and the issue of the servers, because there are still questions that are being asked that it's difficult to be able to explain or give answers without an audit, an independent audit by the Commission itself.
In your past interviews, you've maintained that to a great extent the past elections were free and fair. I doubt if they were credible. What do you think? Do you still maintain that same?
I still maintain that the 8th of August election was fairly credible, that it fairly reflected the will of the Kenyan people, as per the information that I had as a commissioner at the time, because you can only go by what you have. I mean, there's speculation, but that is speculation. So in the absence of anything that shows you otherwise, I have not found any reason to distance myself from that election that I was party to in terms of declaring the winner. So, in the absence really of an audit that has been done, which hasn't happened, there hasn't been any audit of the systems, there hasn't been any audit of the forms, I have no reason to say that that wasn't a fair, that it did not fairly express the will of the Kenyan people.
Does it mean that, in your view, if the kits were to be opened and everything else remaining as it is, did Uhuru Kenyatta win the presidency, in your view?
I mean, what I have said is that given the information that I have, I mean, given what has been presented to us, I have no reason to question that. But should there be other evidence that comes up that points another way, then that is something that I'll be open to looking at. But for now, the information that we have, at least that I had at the time that we announced the result, was what we announced, that was a fairly representative view of the Kenyan voters.
Of course, no, that's even an unfair question, because the elections were dismissed by the Supreme Court, as it were. A moment like that, like this, becomes a moment of reflection. As a former commissioner, in your view, where do you think things started going wrong as the results were being announced?
For us at the time, the only concern we had was on election night, when the system, when we saw the display was not changing the results. And we asked questions, what was happening, and it took Saffron a while to figure out, and they came back to us and they said that the system there were too many people who were trying to access the system. And that is why, we were not seeing a display of the results. But that is what we had from the service provider. One of the things that I wish we had, one of our experts there, to be able to verify these things for us. And that is why, on that night for me, I really wished Chris Musando was there. I really wished he was there, because I I felt that he would have given us an honest view of what happened. He would have, if there was something that had happened. But in the absence of that, we had to rely on the expert advice that were being given by Saffron at the point.
Does it mean that the experts that were handling the servers and the kits were not the commission experts, but experts that were given by Saffron?
Yes, a majority of those who were handling the result on that night were Saffron. It was a company that was handling most of it. We had a few of our staff there, but I mean, all the answers, the responses that were being given to us on that night were from Saffron, not from our staff directly.
Again, where do you think things went wrong as the process progressed? Do you think the interference of the results happened from outside or within the commission?
I mean, I am not saying that the results were interfered with, really. I don't know. I'm just saying that the questions that came to us was about the display, the delay that happened on that night on the display of the results, and the fact that we ended up not having 11,000 of those forms transmitted to us. So I think, for me personally, what I've always said is that I have felt that, you know, the way we handled the Supreme Court case is what led to the defeat. The fact that we did not give access to the servers, the fact that the forms that we presented to them were not in the order in which we were expected to do. So I mean, for me, those are the issues that remain unanswered on why we ended up not giving the forms as they were supposed to be done, why we did not open the servers. And those are the questions that I raised from the very beginning. I raised them from the very beginning. So, you know, when people say, why are you talking about these things now? I look back and I say, I have said them before. I said them in the boardroom on many occasions. And the threats that I started receiving from the 1st of September were threats that I was receiving because I had spoken out and said that if we have staff who are involved in even making, let's even leave the results alone. Let's even leave let's assume that the results were never tampered with. There was no problem. But there are people who made us lose the Supreme Court case. There were people who were given the responsibility of looking at all those forms and ensuring that those forms were the forms that were required. Why didn't anybody go to the chairman, for instance, and ask for the original 34C? Because it is there. There was an original. It is still with him in his office. Why, if you are preparing for the Supreme Court, why didn't you go to the chairman and ask to be given those forms? I have personally seen some of the original forms that had been received from the returning officers, but what was put to the Supreme Court was different. Why were we putting different forms to the Supreme Court from the ones that the returning officers had worked hard to bring? So those are the questions I'd been raising from the very beginning, and saying that the chief operating officer, the CEO, was responsible for coordinating all this. He assured us along with our lawyers that all the forms, that they had gone through each of the forms.
That is Chiloba.
Chiloba, that they had gone through each of the forms, and that the forms that were being given to the Supreme Court were the forms as delivered by the returning officers, that they had all the security features. So when you had our lawyer, Paul Mwite, say that he was ready to have the forms available, it's because that's the assurance we had been given. And then to look around and you find actually that wasn't the case. For me, that's why I had been saying that action needed to be taken against the CEO, because he gave us his word. He had given us his word that he had gone through the forms.
Why do you think it's become so hard for the country to get rid of Chiloba when everything seems to point to his management of the whole election issue?
You know, I have learned a lot in the last 9 months that I was home, that I was in Kenya. I have learned that, you know, the institutions are built in such a way that they're not supposed to serve the Kenyan people. They're supposed to serve political interests. I have learned that CEOs and the Secretariat and senior Secretariat staff are put there for a reason. They work for a system. And that is why that system will fight you back if you're trying to touch people who serve their interest. And that is what you have seen come out. You're going to see more of attacks against Roselyn Akombe, against my personal life, against all this, because I'm trying to raise concerns. I have raised concerns that touch on the system. and that system will come back and beat you hard. And that is what we saw. That's what it is. So if you are serving that system will protect you. If you are not serving that system, it will come back and beat you up, which is what it's doing right now to me. And so that is my response to that question. And so people, some commissioners, including the chairman, what he's going through is because he's not serving the system. If he was serving the system, he wouldn't be going through the kind of humiliation that you saw him go through at Parliament, where you're seeing members of Parliament telling a whole chairman, turning him away from a parliamentary session and telling him to go back and bring his commissioners. Who does that?
What? Let's talk about that sense of insecurity. There's a Twitter message that is going around under your handle that says you personally saw somebody put a gun on the head of the chairman. Is that true? Is that your message?
No, there are so many Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts that have been set up in my name. I don't have the @Roselyn _Akombe or any other Twitter account is not mine. That is not my Twitter account. I actually do not tweet. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't have a single Facebook page. So all the things that people are seeing on social media, those are not mine. I don't engage in social media. So whatever is posted on social media under my name is absolutely not mine.
Have you ever been threatened as a commissioner because of what you do, because of what you've spoken about, because of what you've insisted on? Have you ever had threats at your life?
Chris, if I did not have those threats, I would have remained at home. If I did not have those concerns, I would still be in Kenya. I wouldn't be here because, I'm, as a person who believes in problem solving, I would have stayed there. But it's those threats that made me realize that there are certain things you can't say and remain in that country. I mean, I had received threats. I had received visits from some politicians coming to talk to me and telling me that I needed to leave. I mean, I was under extreme pressure between the 1st and the 5th of September to resign. So I find it amazing now that, the same politicians are castigating me for resigning. They wanted me to resign at that point. And why did they want me to resign at that point? Because they felt that I was asking for Ezra and some of their own secretariat staff, the director for operations, director for ICT, who are very close to the system, to step aside, to allow us to be able to build the confidence in the system, in the IEBC, in the commission. So there were threats at one point. One of them came and told me, you had told us that the only reason maybe you could resign is if there were threats to your life. We are now coming to tell you that your life is in danger. You really need to go. You really need to go back home. And at that point, I said, I cannot, I said very clearly to them, I will not leave. I will not leave because I still have a task to do. And so those threats were there. I received phone calls. I received messages on WhatsApp, mostly from numbers that I didn't recognize. They were blocked numbers. But those, that became I almost became used to getting those calls. Whenever there was a decision that was being voted on, I got calls. Why are you giving people a hard time? Why are you being so tough-headed? Why can't you just go along? I mean, they made contacts with some of my friends, even in the US, asking my friends to call me and tell me to leave because my life was in danger. So, they create a situation and then make that situation look real as part of the pressure to make you leave the country. So they should be happy that I have left because that's what they had wanted to happen from the very beginning. They should be happy. They should not be going out saying the sort of things that they are saying because they wanted me out. So they should be happy that I have left and now they can replace me with somebody that is more compliant and somebody that can be able to respond to their needs.
When you are still back at home, given that kind of environment, what kind of safety measures did you take as at a personal level?
I mean, I really appreciate the security team that I had with me. I would be forever grateful for the team that I had. Obviously, that was provided by the government of Kenya. They served me with loyalty, and I will forever be grateful for that support that they provided to me. But I also had to take several measures. For many months, by the way, I never used to sleep in one place. You know, I used to sleep in different places. I would visit my auntie, I sleep there. You know, wherever, you know, because I didn't feel comfortable staying in one place because I knew I was being tracked. And, you know, I was very careful about what I ate, where I ate, and I felt really good being here, back in the US, and just being able to go to Starbucks and order coffee without having to watch over who is making that coffee. You know, I could not even go to a restaurant and order water. So, you know, there are things you take for granted. There are things I had really taken for granted that coming back here makes me really, really appreciate that, that part, that I can be able to go into a place and eat without getting worried. You know, that I can go to a friend's place and eat without getting worried that maybe somebody has already, you know, been in touch with my friend and has, you know. So those are the things that I had to watch and be very careful about. And it's not only me. I mean, I could see it from the rest of my colleagues at the commission, taking the same steps, avoiding eating. And it got to a point where even when we needed to, when we started the job, we used to very easily order food and eat together during you know, our meetings. That stopped as we got closer, you know, especially in the last 2 months. That stopped. We could no longer order, you know, food where you'd put your name and then they'll bring for you what you wanted. So those are, I mean, so I'm raising that because it's not only me. Those are, you know, security concerns that even the rest of the commissioners had, to the point whereby they also were very careful about what they eat and things like that.
Yes, in the past interviews, you spoke about two centers of power, the Secretariat and the Commission. Let's start with the Commission. You talked about having trouble with building a consensus, making decisions. Can you speak briefly about that? What were the main issues that you guys were having trouble agreeing on?
I'll give you an example. The chairman had said, Chairman Chibukati had said that he wanted to have staff changes, that for the election to be credible, he needed to have staff changes. When he brought that issue up for discussion, including the fact that somebody had used his password more than 9,000 times without his knowledge, and he brought the issue forward for discussion, and that ends up being a subject to a vote, whereby, you know, how many want these people to go home and how many don't want these people to go home. And even on something like that, you vote.
So when that issue came up, it was voted against?
Yes, it was voted against.
Okay.
And the trend was always the same. I have seen people come out, some commissioners have come out saying that the voting trends were never the same. The record shows for itself, you know, especially in preparation of the second round of the election. It was basically along those partisan lines. I mean, I don't see any other explanation that I could be able to provide, because you had even some commissioners getting worried and saying that I have to go along, otherwise I'm going to receive a phone call. I'm going to go along with the others. I agree with you, but I have to go along with the others because I don't want to receive a phone call. So I mean, those sorts of you know, that atmosphere for me was a difficult one. Also, coming from having spent so many years in the US, whereby you are taught and you teach your children to speak their mind. You know, you are taught to be independent. You are taught to, you know, that you have a right to speak. You have a right to share your views. And when you find people getting to a point where they can't discuss the issues, it's basically, I have been told this is the way we go and this is how we are going to go. So it's, for me, it was that conflict of struggling between what I have, you know, spent years here, where you know, freedom of speech is something that is part and parcel of your life and your work life.
There's been an argument that there's a lot of democracy within the commission, where decisions are up for the vote. You know, majority win, minority, listen, and go home. So how did that then become a problem, given that most of these things you come to decisions based on consensus and agreement and votes. So voting it's a democratic right.
I mean, voting is a democratic right. But what I'm saying is that if you are voting based on issues, if you are discussing and you say you look at the merit and you say this is something that we should do, this is something that you shouldn't do, that makes sense. I mean, it's not like I'm not against voting. I'm against when you just come to the plenary just to vote, not to debate on the issues, not to say, I'm saying we shouldn't do this because of this and this and this. You're coming basically because you have talking points. You have certain talking points that have been given to you. And they're not, I mean, a lot of those commissioners are very, we had a very collegial relationship. It was not an adversarial relationship. But you realize their struggles. You realize that their struggles. You realize that this is not what they would have wanted to say if they had the right to be able to say that. But it's as a result of intimidation for some of them. Some of them were being, they feared the intimidation. And so they would go along with that vote so that they are not intimidated or so they're not subject to any intimidation for themselves and their families. So that is what I'm against, where you're taking decisions not because you believe in them, but because you're carrying somebody's water.
In your view, again, as an insider, this pattern, was it influenced by threats at their personal lives, or was it because they were serving particular interests? Then two, this influence, was it coming from only Jubilee, or was it coming from only NASA, or was it coming from both?
I mean, look, I've already exhausted the discussion on the partisanship. I mean, it's a problem that needs to be addressed.
Sorry about that.
That has saved us.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
But for me, I think the part that we really need to reflect is really how the so-called independent commissions are made to be independent. I'm just trying to be now forward-looking.
Yeah.
That we need to be able to enable these institutions to be truly independent. And for me, how you do it is you start by the recruitment process of the commissioners. Yes, it was fairly transparent. Yes, it was very rigorous the way it was done. But when you have situations in which people, even for myself, where you would have thought that with my sort of expertise, with my sort of background that I had, that it was, that people should have recognized that to be on the basis of merit, that I got the job on the basis of merit. But I was made to feel on many occasions that it was a favor that was done to me. So if I, who has had the years of experience and worked and was confident in my capabilities, was made to feel that it was a favor done to me, that it was I didn't deserve it. I was given because I was given the job because certain people supported me. So if you are put in a situation like that, then you are somehow made to feel that you need to serve those interests of those people who claim to have helped you to get that job. And that is the pressure that some of us were under.
At what point did you realize that you had to take off from Kenya?
For me, it's been a struggle. I mean, to be honest, it's been a struggle for many months because, there are many moments that I felt like leaving from actually the very second day, the first formal meeting that we had after we had been sworn in.
Okay. Not after the nullification?
No, that's what I'm saying, from the very first point when I was sworn in as commissioner.
Okay. Because
of the way, when you come from a place that is very well organized in how it does things, when you come from an institution and a country that has processes in place.
That systems work.
Where systems work, and then you realize that is not what you have. You start questioning yourself, obviously, whether this is the right place. But I stayed on. I said, you know, the reason I'm here is to try and make the system better. And I did. And I gave it all. I gave it my all. I worked hard. I mean, you saw that I spent, most of my colleagues never wanted to go to the media to explain anything. I felt I owed it to my staff. I owed it to all the returning officers across the country to explain to the Kenyan people what they were doing. They're very committed people, especially the field staff, very committed. They want to do the right thing for the country. They inspired me. So I always came out to speak, not because I love being in the media. I actually do not. I came out to speak because I thought I owed it to them to explain what they were doing. But it was also part of building the institution and saying, you know, we need to build this institution because I am taught to defend the institution that I work in. So I came out really to keep defending this institution. So that's why I didn't give up, even when I saw all the challenges, even after Chris was murdered, even after, you know, we had suspended James Mohati of ICT, and then he was returned under circumstances that I can never be able to explain to anybody. So there were all those challenges, but I soldiered on, hoping that things will get better. But for me, it was really, what really changed my mind completely was after my visit to the three counties. When I went to Kisumu, I went to Homa Bay, I went to Siaya, and I talked to my staff at the point. And they were all, you know, I will never forget this lady who's, you know, almost the age of my mother, looking at me, looking me in the eye, returning officer and telling me, Madam Commissioner, I cannot continue working here. My life is in danger. Please, please have me moved from here. I spoke with the, you know, five other returning officers, all of them saying, my life is in danger. I want me to be removed. Please ask that I be removed from here. You know, they were explaining to me their fears because the next day they were going to begin the training of presiding officers at a different level, and they were afraid that they're going to be attacked. And it came to pass. It happened. They have sent me pictures. Those pictures have traumatized me. Pictures of our staff being, you know, being bloodied, being attacked during those trainings. So when I came back to Nairobi from those counties, I did a report. I did a detailed report. I wrote an email, even before I finished the report, I wrote an email to my colleagues, all of them, and said, the situation in those counties is really difficult. We're putting our staff in, can we reconsider how we are doing the training there so that we don't put our staff in harm's way? What response did I get? Oh, we should just continue. You're playing into the hands of those people who do not want to have the election. Let's proceed. Let's go on with I was almost being blamed for raising those issues. And for me, as somebody whose responsibility at the UN and at the African Union had always been to save lives, I could not see myself continuing to work in a place whereby I was going to put the lives of our staff and voters at risk. Actually, for me, that is what really broke, you know, that is really what determined where it became a moral issue. Became really a moral issue for me. That why would I deliberately sit in Nairobi in a boardroom and put the lives of our staff at risk? And I have condemned those actions that NASA has done in those places. It's absolutely unacceptable to attack our staff. Absolutely unacceptable to attack our staff. Absolutely unacceptable to cause the sort of harm that they are causing to innocent people who just want to make a livelihood by working for the commission.
Again, just while you're still on the same thing, those counties, definitely the training didn't go on because of the violence. Do you know of any other places apart from this, the counties in what is commonly known as Luo Nyanza? Do you know of any other places that the training has been disrupted?
I mean, I've not kept a very good tap of what has happened afterwards because I obviously wanted to disconnect from what is going on. So I have switched off my contacts with Kenya. Actually, you know, I have switched off the telephone that I had contact. So I don't. But I heard that there were concerns in parts of Western Kenya, and for me, then that becomes problematic. That if you know, an election takes place at the polling station level, because that is where the voters. That's the only contact that the voters have with the commission.
Yeah.
It is at the polling station. That is where you also count the results, the votes. It's at the polling station. Everything else is mathematics. Everything else is arithmetic, because what the returning officer is doing at the constituency level is adding up the numbers.
Yeah.
What you're doing at the national level is adding up the numbers, but the election itself takes place at the polling station. So when you are dealing with a situation in which you are rushing the program for training of presiding officers, then you're going to repeat the same mistakes that you did in the last election. And I had invested, God knows I did invest a lot in ensuring that the manual for the presiding officers was changed, was made easy, and I wanted to make sure that we standardize the training of all the presiding officers across the country to ensure that you don't have a repeat of that. So when you've invested a lot in that training, and then that you realize that that training is going to be done haphazardly, then how can you say you're going to have a credible election? If your poll officials will not have been being rushed with the training, will not have been trained properly to be able to avert the problems. But for me, again, it's the moral question of it all, that we are supposed to be saving lives. We're supposed to be uniting the country. We shouldn't be doing anything that brings the country more apart. We shouldn't be doing anything that puts our staff and voters in harm's way. And that is why I've been saying it is important to come back and sit around the table so that you can be able to say, this is what is best for the country, rather than pushing ahead and saying, we will do this election at any cost. It cannot be at the cost of the lives of Kenyans and voters.
Dr. Akombe, the country is divided down the middle. It's only somebody who is not honest and sincere who will want to dispute that. Again, given this environment, and I know you've spoken about this, you've made this statement many times. What's the way forward? Where do we go from here?
When you have divided, the country divided right in the middle, the way it is, solving such issues does not require you to then have another process that actually further divides the country. I mean, I know that people say that, we should dismiss the fact that Right Honorable Raila Odinga has pulled out of the race. It is his right to pull out of the race. It is also the right of people in other places, who want to continue with the election to do so. It's perfectly within their right, because the Constitution does not force anybody to participate in an election. But does that bring the country together? No, it does not. So that is why it is important to come together and say, we are one people. Let's sit around the table. Let's discuss these issues. What is it? What is the core? What is the problem that we are having? Are we facing a situation in which people feel excluded from government or from their own country? Are we facing a situation in which people want to feel that they are just as part of the country as anybody else? Let's be frank and discuss these issues. And once you resolve the issues, then you can quickly, you can then move towards an electoral process. But we are trying to solve a purely political problem using elections and the Supreme Court.
So do you think organizations like the UN, people like Barack Obama, people like Kofi Annan should move in, should try to mediate what's going on in Kenya? Because things are getting out of hand, and I think after the elections, it may be too late to try to mediate or to bring the warring parties together.
I mean, I'm a believer in African problems have to be solved by the Africans. So I still believe that the Kenyan problems could be fixed by the Kenyans themselves. I mean, I believe that we have quite a multi-sectoral community that can bring together, that can come together and try and resolve the problems. You have the religious community. You have the church, the business community. But
these guys are divided. The religious, they don't have any moral authority to even bring together politicians, because the religious community is divided along tribal lines.
That is precisely actually the point, that the fact that you actually do have those divisions, it means that those who are divided can come together, start by coming together. Because you see, you can always, relying all the time on people from outside to come and solve your problems does not always help. Yes, if it gets to a point whereby, the inside, let's try and find the solutions inside first. And so it's important to try and address these issues and say, and you can find a political consensus around which you can say, yes, let's go back to the Supreme Court. Let's explain the challenges that we have in being able to deliver a credible election. Remember, it's not just an election, it's a credible election. Let's go back to the Supreme Court. Let's see, that's the same Supreme Court that gave you 60 days could consider giving you more time to be able to settle these political issues and then have a proper and credible election that unites the country, rather than what we are trying to do right now. What we're trying to do is rush through an election, have a crisis, and then start dealing with the political problem after the crisis. Surely we can do it better. We can deal with the political crisis now so that we can save lives.
A few rapid questions. Why do you think Chepkati, the chairman, is moving on with the elections when he knows that the credibility of the elections are going to be questioned?
Well, he has said himself. It's not, nobody's putting words to Chairman Chebukati's mouth. He said himself that if the things, if we continue going the way we are, he does not see that being a credible process. He does not see how he can deliver a credible election. He has called for dialogue. That is an appeal that he has made. He has called for dialogue. And, I saw that yesterday he had a meeting with the Right Honorable Raila Odinga and Salia Mudavadi. I understand that he had scheduled to have a meeting on Monday with His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya. I understand that might not happen, that might not take place. But you see, I can understand the dilemma he finds himself. He's a chairman that is under siege. He's a chairman that does not have the full support of his commissioners, and as long as he doesn't have enough votes, he has lost one now. So he doesn't have enough votes to be able to say, let's go back, let's take a pause and see where we're heading. So that is where he finds himself in.
People have said on social media that you're a coward who took off and left your country to burn. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that charge?
Obviously, it's a very painful charge because I didn't have to take the job as commissioner of the IEBC. I didn't have to. I could have walked out of it from the very beginning. I had a comfortable life here. I still do. I had a comfortable job. I went out of my comfort zone. I left my family. I left my children. By the time I left, by the time I've come back now, they are a year older than I had left. I missed their birthdays. I missed my son's first day to kindergarten. I missed my daughter's grand moments, many of them. So I didn't have to take that job, but I took it because of the passion that I had for my country. I did not want to see a situation that like we had in 2007, 2008. I'm proud of the fact that after the August 8th election, we did not plunge, we did not go that path. Yes, we had lives lost, and any life lost, one life lost is one too many, but we did not have 1,200 people killed. We did not have people displaced from their homes. So I'm proud of that fact, that I contributed in one way or another to people having a sense of credibility to the process that we had during the 8th of August election. And I didn't feel that we were heading the same way with the 26th of August election. We were not heading that way. I was not comfortable with the path that we were taking. I raised it in memos. You see, I would be considered a coward if I hadn't raised these things. I raised those in written memos, 2 written memos, including issues, the moral struggle that I was having regarding the staff, the lives of our staff. So I did not leave without pointing out areas that we needed to fix. I left because I realized that regardless of how much I was going to push those things, those issues, I didn't have the votes, because that's where we had descended to. We didn't have enough numbers to be able to move those processes forward. So there are times you know, and anybody who has looked at who has studied political science will tell you, or even good business management will tell you that there are times when you have to walk away from a negotiation process, or from a process that you don't think lives up to your standards. You have to have the confidence to be able to walk out. And I did not just walk out and come to my nice apartment house in Jersey and kept quiet. No, I have come out and continue to do my job as a patriotic Kenyan and as an American citizen, to raise these concerns, to say where we're heading. You know, it's more like a cry for help. My departure is a cry for help for my country, to say, let's not go there. Let's do more. There's more we can do to save lives. Let's not wait until we have 20 people dead before we can do anything. You know, the standards, when you look at, you know, the index that a lot of business companies use for measuring a country in conflict in Africa before they invest, it's, you know, once you have 25 people killed, they start talking about this place is not very good for investment, you're getting into a conflict. Once you get into 70, you know, those numbers, we've already reached there. We have had 70 people killed in the country so far. We shouldn't, I mean, I know that the international media is not focusing on that. I know that the international community is not talking about that. But we have had 70 people killed as related, you know, regards elections. Those are 70 lives. Those are children. Those are mothers. Those are fathers that have been killed. Do we have to get to 1,000 before people can come and save the country?
As we wind up, Dr. Akombe, you certainly shone the spotlight on the so-called diaspora, referred to at times as economic refugees. Mm-hmm. Why do you think your experience away from home prepared you to play the role that you've played, for bad or for good, in the commission?
I mean, I think people should now start taking seriously the role of the diaspora, the Kenyan diaspora, in the progress of the country. We are not just people who send money, but we have a positive contribution to play. I mean, we had a candidate for the first time, a presidential candidate as the diaspora, you know, which is a first, and that is some sort of progress there. But I think for me, it's you know, when you are a Kenyan living in the diaspora, there are things that you end up having to learn and having to pick. And it's about everything that you are is because you worked hard. We all came here. I mean, I came here with nothing. I became who I am in the US because I worked hard, because I spent my nights working and spent my days going to school. So that sheer part of, you know, the hard work, the fact that, you know, and the US principle is a dream, the American dream, that if you work hard, you'll get somewhere. But also it's the things like, you know, corruption. I mean, you're brought up in the US knowing that it's zero tolerance to corruption. So for me, it was very clear, and I made it very clear whenever I was in Kenya that I shall not take anybody's money. I will not be bribed, and nobody even attempted to do it, because I always made it very clear that I will never take any bribe. You know, it's the things like honesty, that you know that is what you see, that you need to be frank, you need to speak up. But also the fact that you are taught here, you know, from when you are a child, to defend your independence, to defend your right to be able to speak and have your mind heard, speak your mind, but also respect other people's opinions. And those are things that, for me, I thought I was bringing into the job, and I tried as much as possible to bring in the job. But for me, it's also the hard work, the fact that you need to continue working hard, that you achieve you get where you are, because of your hard work, not because of anybody that you know, not because of any politician that holds your hand to get where you are. And those are ideals that I had hoped to bring into the commission. You know, I had really hoped to professionalize the place, to bring some professional order in the way things were done. But as Chairman Chebukati said, you know, there is no room for that sort of professionalism in Kenya with the interference that you find among politicians.
Lastly, what does the future hold for you? Are you going back to the UN, and can you speak to the rumors that Kenyans are already calling your former place of work, to besmirch your name, to say that she put the country in danger. Is that really happening?
No, I mean, there has been a lot of things. There have been a lot of things on social media. I have seen some very active participants on social media circulating false letters that they don't even know who is who in the UN system, whereby they would put the head of the Department of Political Affairs signing a letter purportedly as the head of the OIOS that are under investigation. So there are a lot of things that are going on. I mean, we have a very active Kenyan diaspora here too, and I understand, I have heard the same rumors that you are talking about of people reaching out to my employer at the United Nations and trying to besmirch my name and talk about how my departure from Kenya has burnt the country. I have not seen the country burn. I see that as a responsibility of being a whistleblower, which is allowed in this country, and which is also allowed at the United Nations. And you know, I would say that those are attempts, you know, that will head nowhere. And I will, you know, at the appropriate time, I have not decided yet, but at the appropriate time, once I have had the time to spend with my family and rest, I'll go back to my job at the United Nations. And, you know, I know that those attacks will continue. I know that I am dealing with a system that is bent on damaging me. But I have a responsibility as a Kenyan to speak out and to try and play my part as a citizen of Kenya. But I also have a responsibility as a US citizen to raise awareness within the US system, within the US government, of what exactly is going on and how best the international community can work to help my country. Because my goal, Chris, my real goal is really to avert a situation like what we had in 2007, 2008.
Lastly, Dr. Akombe, as this movie plays out, what breaks your heart about the whole thing that is just now overwhelming everybody?
I mean, for me, it's you see, one thing about also living in the US is the respect for life, sanctity of life, you know. But and that is one thing that really hurts me, that we don't respect life in Kenya. That's why it's very easy to murder anybody. That's why it's very easy for Chris to have just been brutally murdered without any explanation, really investigation. So for me, what breaks my heart is that we don't value life, and we're not doing enough to try and prevent any more deaths in that country. That people talk about 70 people dead, and it's almost like it's normal to have 70 people to have been killed. I mean, in the US, if you had 70 people killed as a result of an election, it would be a big issue, because we respect life. There is respect for life. Why is it that, you know, why is it that our international partners, what they accept, what they don't accept in their own country, they would easily accept in ours, that it is okay if it's only 70 people that have died. But 70 is a number. 70 is not just a number. 70 is people. It's human beings. It's somebody's mother. It's somebody's father. It's a child who could have had a potential, who would have become a commissioner like I was before. So for me, what breaks my heart is that we're heading, you know, you're heading towards a wall. You know you're going to hit the wall. And it's not just the wall, that there are lives that are at stake. But we're not doing enough to prevent that. And so for me, that is what I've always stood for. It's being truthful. If the truth hurts Jubilee, so be it. If that truth hurts NASA, so be it. But we have to be able to come up and speak the truth and say, this is what is going on. Let's try and resolve the problems that we have. My life has been a result of risks that I have taken. I mean, even that job at the commission was a risk. But I was ready to take it. I've explored it. I now know what it is to work in an environment like that. You don't get better if you don't take those risks. So really, you know, that is a lesson that I would like, if there's anything that I would say to the young people out there who are looking at me and seeing me as a quitter, I would tell them there is a time that you have to walk away out of certain things. Because there is once one door closes, there's another one that is waiting to open. So just go out there, pursue what you feel is right. Always stand for the truth. Eventually, you know, people will throw mud at you. Eventually, the truth will stand out and people will know who you are.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akombe.
Thank you.
We'll see you again next week as we watch the elections as they unfold in Kenya.
Okay, thank you.
We've been speaking to Dr. Roselyn Akombe, a former commissioner with the IEBC in Kenya. My name is Chris Omalwa, and I work for Nation Media Group. Thank you for watching.